In January 1959, when Fidel Castro led a guerrilla army to drive dictator Fulgencio Batista out of Havana, the United States wasn't over-alarmed that it would have much impact. But relations swiftly soured as the Cuban communists expropriated companies. 1961 ushered in an ideological ice age. Washington decided to remove Castro by force. On the 17th of April, Cuban exiles took part in the island's Bay of Pigs invasion, conceived under Eisenhower, launched by Kennedy and funded by the CIA, but it failed. As Plan B, Washington imposed an economic embargo. But Cold War comrade Moscow was happy to help Havana. In February 1962, spy planes spotted Soviet nuclear weapon silos in Cuba, threatening the U.S. The Cuban Missile Crisis sorely tested Kennedy's abilities, but he and Khrushchev in the Kremlin negotiated a standout. In 1982, the U.S. listed Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism for its role aiding revolutionaries in Africa and Latin America. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union subsidized the Cuban economy, but when the USSR dissolved in 1991, Havana had nowhere to turn to. Living standards in the Western Hemisphere's only Marxist nation crashed. Ordinary Cubans built rafts to escape to Florida. For 6 months in 1980, the two governments had agreed on a mass migration. This time it was illegal, and the U.S. Coast Guard intercepted tens of thousands, the peak in 1994. One of those who drowned was the mother of little Elian Gonzalez in 2000. Like many, the boy was sent back after a 7-month legal battle. Havana claimed a political victory as he was reunited with his father, although others were allowed to stay in the U.S. In 2000, former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, visiting Cuba, joined a growing chorus of Americans calling for the embargo to be eased. Washington then legislated to let U.S. farm exports go to Cuba, but the island is still a bottom exporter. In 2011, Fidel Castro's younger brother Raúl formally took his place as president. Economic reforms allowed Cubans to launch small businesses, and buying and selling property and consumer goods was legalized. President Obama and President Raúl Castro shook hands symbolically at the funeral of Nelson Mandela in 2013 in Soweto, hinting at better U.S.-Cuba relations. In December 2014, Obama and Castro simultaneously announced a process toward normalizing relations. In April this year, the two leaders met on the margins of the Americas Summit in Panama. Then in May, Washington dropped Cuba from the terrorist blacklist, but Congress still hasn't ended the trade embargo.
Thank you.